Dear listeners, thank you for your incredible support in helping our channel grow. We're aiming for 1,000 subscribers, so please support us by subscribing and helping us reach this milestone. Now let's start the story. Flashback, Ben, back at the formerly captured hospital. I was walking around, checking on my men. That sounded funny to me, my men, and noticed none of them had NV on. I squatted by a private and asked, "Where's your night vision gear?" He replied, "Sergeant, we never used it before." I stood up and ordered in my command voice, "All night sentries will use NV gear until further notice." I watched as they pulled their NV gear out of their packs, put them on their helmets, switched them on, and began to scan their assigned areas. One of them reported, "I have a large contingent of scumsuckers on the move." I moved beside him and verified that he was correct. I informed him, "They are positioning themselves for a morning attack. Let's see if we can mess up their plans." I put the thermal scope back on my sniper rifle, set the bipod on the window frame, and began to take out the scumsuckers. At first they were confused because they couldn't tell where the fire was coming from, but finally one of them figured out it was the hospital, and they hightailed it back to their rat holes. I waited until one stuck his head up and then blew it off. The private beside me said, "That was a hell of a shot." I replied, "Thanks for the praise, but I'm just doing part of my job." We spent the rest of the watch keeping the scumsuckers from coming back. It was time for the next watch, so I pulled them to the side and ordered, "You will use your NV and continue to scan the area. We have effectively eliminated 15 of the scumsuckers tonight. They are trying to mass for a morning attack, so this is of utmost importance." I headed to George's HQ area where he was sawing logs on a makeshift couch bed. I crawled over in the corner and caught a little sleep. I woke in 2 hours like I planned and went to check on the watch. Thank God they were all awake. If I had found one sleeping, I probably would have tossed the scumsucker out of the window. I squatted beside a private and asked, "What's going on?" He complained, "The scumsuckers are moving but are staying just out of the range of our M4s. I smiled and said, "Let's shake them up some." I found a good position for my sniper rifle, turned on the thermal scope, and began to blast the scumsuckers to their hell. It didn't take as long for them to figure it out this time until they hauled back to their safe location. I yawned and said, "Come and wake me when they start moving again." The private woke me 3 more times that night, and I sent the scumsuckers scurrying. I couldn't wait until tomorrow when the M107 was supposed to show up. Then their safe location was going to turn into their graves. Someone kicked my boot, and waking from a sound sleep, I reacted by using a leg sweep and knocked them on their butt. George complained, "Ben, what the hell?" I apologized, "Sorry, sir. I was up off and on most of the night. The scumsuckers were trying to mass in an area for an attack." George said, "Next time I will make sure to shout your name." I laughed and said, "That's probably a good idea." I stood up, helped George to his feet, and he said, "The Blackhawk should be here in 10 minutes. They're going to drop the supplies on the roof." I asked, "Is there any coffee around?" George said, "Just the instant from the MREs. At least we have a canteen full of hot water." Shit, I knew there was something I forgot to ask George to get, a coffee pot. I went to the canteen full of hot water, pulled out 2 of the instant coffee packs from the MREs, poured them in a cup, added the hot water, and said, "I'm heading up to the roof to make sure the area is relatively clear." George followed me, and I asked, "Whatever happened to Jack's spotting scope?" George said, "I'm not sure." I swore, "Shit, Jack will kick your, but if you lost his spotting scope." A corporal approached, held the spotting scope up, and asked, "Sergeant, is this device that you're looking for?" Thank God it was Jack's spotting scope. I asked, "Corporal, what have you been doing with this?" He said, "I keep an eye on the scumsuckers with it, and announce when we have a new suicide bomber coming." I smiled at him and said, "Good work, Corporal. Why don't you keep the spotting scope, but whatever you do, don't let it get damaged, or my spotter will have your butt." He said, "Thank you, Sergeant. I will make sure I take good care out of it. By the way, there are a bunch of scumsuckers over there." He pointed at the remnant of a wall of one of the buildings, and I said, "Thank you, and we're going to take care of them after the Blackhawk arrives." The area was relatively clear, and cleared out even more after I used my sniper rifle to send a couple of them to hell. The Blackhawk ended up being a CH-53 Super Stallion with a huge pallet swinging below it. I ordered, "Stay clear of the pallet." The men listened to my order. Hell, some of them even left the roof. The CH-53 carefully set the pallet on the roof. They cut it loose, and then the chopper got the hell out of Dodge. The Marines rushed to the pallet until I ordered, "This isn't a Christmas present for you to open. I want an inventory of all the items on the pallet." I looked around, saw the corporal whose nose I messed up, pointed at him and said, "And that's your job." I pointed to 2 other PVTS, and added, "And you will help him." I watched some as they began to unload the pallet, then I heard, "Incoming suicide bomber." I ran over to the side of the roof where announcement came from. This time it was a little boy, and I started to hesitate, but George whispered, "Ben, Boys or girls, it doesn't matter to the scumsuckers as they do the same to both of them. Take the shot. It helped me feel slightly better when I took the shot, and the suicide vest exploded. Somehow we needed to find the scumsucker making the suicide vests and eliminate him. I looked at George and asked, George, do all the suicide bombers come from the same direction? He thought for a moment and said, not all of them, but most of them do. What are you thinking? I smiled at George and said, I think a little recon mission is called for. I want to find the place where the suicide vests are being created and take it, and the scumsucker building them out. George faltered, Ben, I'm not sure I can authorize that mission. It sounds dangerous. I knew sooner or later George and I were going to disagree, so I suggested, Sir, why don't you get on the horn to Colonel Maggie and see what she says? George looked at me and asked, She's going to approve it, isn't she? I smiled at George and replied, Yes, sir, she will. I'm recon, and that is part of what I do. The corporal came over. I looked at him and asked, Well? He handed me a yellow legal pad and said, Sergeant, here's a list of the items we've received. I also double-checked it with the inventory sheet on the pallet. I replied, Good job, Corporal. I looked at the list and said, Bless you, Colonel Maggie. George asked, Did you get everything you wanted? I smiled and said, It's even better than that. She sent a coffee maker. George responded, A lot of good that will do. We don't have electricity. I replied, Not now we don't. But this is a hospital, so it will have backup generators. With a little work, we will not only have power, we will have lights at night. The corporal who handed me the sheet said, Sergeant, there are power mains that run close to the hospital. They were severed by the scumsuckers and are hanging loose. Perhaps I could hook them up so we would have power almost all the time. I asked, Do you have any experience working with things like this? He answered, Yes, Sergeant, I did it back home all the time. I ordered, Corporal, if you electrocute yourself, I'm going to kill you. He laughed and replied, No problem, Sergeant, I will be careful. I looked at George and said, Now it's time to take care of some scumsuckers. We headed up to the roof. I found the box containing the M107 and the other boxes containing the M25S and changed my mind. I looked at a private and ordered, Go find me the 5 best shooters from last night. He took off and I told George, First, I want to deploy the M25S before we pull out the M107 and raise some hell. I took the first M25 out of its box, found the ammo, slapped in the magazine, racked the action, headed to the edge of the roof, and found a scumsucker who thought he was going to sneak past me. I used the milled scope to calculate the distance. A person's chest is 16 to 17 inches high. By using the mill dots in the scope, you can calculate the range. Height in inches /361,000 / number of mill dots equals range. 17 /361,000 / 0.49 equals 963 yards. Ran the math in my head, did the holdover, and fired. The round hit him in the chest, and he was dead. George commented, Nice shot. How far away was he? I replied, He was just under 1,000 yards. One of the shooters came up and reported, Sergeant, you wanted to see me? I replied, Let's wait until everyone shows up. The other 4 showed up, then I handed them their new M25S along with the cheat sheet that was in the box and began my instructions. This is your new rifle. I tested one of them, and they are accurate as hell. George interrupted. Ben made a kill shot with that rifle at almost 1,000 yards. I continue. The accuracy of this rifle is only as good as the shooter is at estimating the size of a scumsucker's chest using the milled reticle. The average chest size is 16 to 17 inches. For the shot, I saw the scumsucker's chest measured .49 mils. If you look on your cheat sheet, you will see that equates to 963 yards. Now don't bother with messing with the dials on the scope. Just make the holdover the cheat sheet tells you and fire. One of the shooters asked, What about the wind? I replied, Well, the good news is it's not very windy here. Later we will go over holdoffs for windage and also how to clean your rifle so you don't damage it. Are there any further questions? They didn't have any questions, took their new rifles, and began to practice. George suggested, Ben, do you want to help them some more? I replied, No, George, not right now. I have a date with the M107 and some scumsuckers that are hiding behind a piece of one of the buildings. I pulled the M107 out of its box, grabbed some ammo, and headed to my firing area. Flashback, Jack. The next day, the training of John. It took another hour to arrange John's foot locker. I was dead tired and said, I'm hitting the sack. We need to make sure we're up early. John announced, Don't worry, Sergeant, I always wake up early from when I was the cook since I had to get up and begin breakfast. I felt like complaining but knew it wouldn't do any good, so I turned over and went to sleep. Too early the next morning, I heard John moving around, and it woke me up. I flipped on the light and complained, Damn, you weren't kidding about waking up early. You're up before the roosters. John apologized, Sorry about that. The good news is I made my bed. I got out of my bed, walked over to his bed, and surprisingly a quarter did bounce off it. I praised him, good job. Since we're up early, let's go do some PT. After that, we'll catch a shower and then make some MREs for breakfast. We headed out to the track, and even though I hated it, started to run laps. John did better today. It was good to see that at least he was trying. After PT, we headed to the laundry, picked up our clean BDUs and towels, and headed to the shower. After the shower, John said, "If you show me how to requisition MREs, I will do that today." I really wondered how in the hell John had survived all this time if he didn't know how to even requisition things, so I finally asked, "John, it doesn't seem like you know how to requisition things. So how in the hell did you get the food that you cooked?" John said, "Headquarters sent me the food and the menu I was to follow, and I have to tell you it was hell." I probed, "Why was it so bad?" John said, "Well, many times the food they sent was terrible quality or they wouldn't send enough for the number of troops I had to feed. There were times that I couldn't even make the meals on the menus because they didn't send the correct food." I asked, "Did you tell anyone about this?" John slouched. "I let it ride this time because I felt I was onto something," and replied, "Well, I tried to tell the colonel, but every time I tried to tell her, she yelled at me for the food being so bad." I asked, "Do you think they sent you the food for this morning's breakfast?" John realized he was slouching, stood up straight, and apologized. "Sorry, Sergeant, I know slouching is a bad habit I have. And unless the colonel stopped the food shipments, then we should have received the food for this breakfast." I said, "John, I would love to see what headquarters sent you for this breakfast." John responded, "Follow me." We headed into the empty kitchen, and there was a pallet sitting on the floor of the kitchen. John walked over to it and said, "This was for this morning's breakfast." He handed me the menu, and I read that it was supposed to be SOS. I took a deep breath and complained, "What the hell stinks?" John poked around on the pallet and said, "The beef for the SOS wasn't refrigerated and has spoiled." I asked, "Why wasn't it refrigerated?" John replied, "I have no idea. That's the way it always came in." I really felt like I was onto something, so I questioned, "Are you telling me they shipped this in a truck that's not refrigerated?" John said, "Yeah, that's right." When I complained, they said they didn't have any refrigerated trucks available. No wonder we were all sick. HQ was doing a number on us. I ordered, "Come on, John, we're going to have a talk with Colonel Maggie." We walked into Colonel Maggie's office, and she said, "I wondered when you would get here. You're a little late." I looked at Colonel Maggie and said, "Sir, John might not be to blame for the poor quality of the food since HQ has been doing a number on us. They are shipping the food in unrefrigerated trucks, so by the time it gets here, it's spoiled." Colonel Maggie sat all the way back in her chair and said, "Jack, that's hard to believe." I said, "Well, you should come and see the food they sent us for this morning's breakfast. It's spoiled already sitting in the kitchen." John added, "I am sure it was spoiled by the time it arrived." Colonel Maggie ordered, "John, lead the way to the kitchen." The three of us went to the kitchen. Colonel Maggie walked in, took one whiff of the air, and about puked. She looked at John and asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" I interceded, "Sir, he tried to tell you several times, but every time he went to your office, you yelled at him about the food." Colonel Maggie looked deep in thought, and then said, "John the First owe you an apology for not allowing you to tell me about this. I promise you I won't do that again. Jack, thank you for bringing this to my attention. Now if you don't mind, I have some butts to chew." Colonel Maggie left. John looked at me and said, "Sergeant, thank you for doing this for me. I can cook if I get quality food." I grinned at John and said, "How would you like a chance to prove that?" He smiled and said, "I would die for a chance to prove it. What are you thinking?" I smiled and said, "I was thinking we might do some midnight requisitioning from HQ." That night we headed to the motor pool, borrowed a Humvee, and took a little trip. Flashback, Masha, the next day. While breakfast with Tina was easy, lunch turned into a disaster. I made our food for lunch, put some in the blender, ground it up, placed some on Linda's plate, and began to feed her. Tina took one look at the food on her plate, cried, and threw the bowl across the kitchen where it made a terrible mess. I picked up the bowl, cleaned it, added more of the good food, and put it in front of Tina. She took a look at it again, was ready to throw it until I caught it, put it in front of her, and said, "This is all you're getting to eat today. If you're not hungry now, perhaps you will be later." I took the food, put it in the refrigerator, and listened to Tina's crying. The anger that Tina displayed was remarkable. She rocked in her high chair so hard I thought she was going to tip it over. I pulled her out of the high chair and set her on the floor where she grabbed the high chair, shook it, and began to whimper. I told her, "When you are hungry enough, you will eat the food I made, but until then you can suffer." I finished feeding Linda and took her into the bathroom to clean her. Tina followed with her sad little whimpering sound. I looked at her and asked, "Are you ready to eat the food I made for you?" I put Linda down for her nap, then picked up Tina, took her to the high chair, and fastened her in. I warmed the food from the refrigerator in the microwave, set it in front of her, where she took one look at it and began to cry. Since her mouth was open, I put a spoonful of food in it, which surprised her. I thought she was going to eat it until she spit it all over both of us, which made me angry. I took the food away and said, "You can sit there until you are ready to eat." I went to the bathroom, cleaned myself up, then heard a bunch of strange noises in the kitchen. I walked in and Tina had escaped from the high chair by herself and had even opened the refrigerator and pulled a bunch of food out of it and onto the floor. I scolded her, "Bad girl. Since you want to be bad, then you need to spend some time alone." I picked her up, took her to Jack's gun room, made sure the safe was closed, put her inside, and closed the door. She immediately banged on the door and cried, but I was angry with her and wasn't going to put up with her problems anymore. Finally, things got quiet, and when I opened the door, I found Tina had fallen asleep. This was good because just then I heard Linda waking up. I closed the bedroom door again and went to take care of Linda. Linda was happy and cooed when she saw me, so I picked her up and told her, "You're such a good girl." I hugged her and realized her diaper needed changing. I changed her diaper, which was so much better smelling than Tina's, and we began to play on the floor. Our playing must have woken Tina as she began to bang on the door. Linda went over and asked, "Tina?" I smiled and answered yes. Tina was a bad girl. Linda said, "Bad Tina, make mess." It was the middle of the afternoon, and I decided Tina must be hungry by now. I opened the door and found her sitting on the floor crying. I picked her up and my nose was assaulted. "Your diaper needs changing." I changed her diaper, which smelled up the whole house, so I used some spray to freshen the air. Then I took her to the high chair, sat her in it, warmed the food in the microwave again, and set it in front of her. She saw it, began to cry, so I took it away, and she promptly stopped crying and reached for the food. I set the food in front of her, and finally, she was hungry enough to eat something besides fruit. I fed her. She ate the whole bowl and seemed to want more. I said, "Sorry, no more food." You threw the other food on the floor. I took her out of the high chair, and then she and Linda began to play. I looked at the kitchen and knew I had some cleaning to do. There was still some food mess remaining from Tina's earlier fit. I finally cleaned it, and also the refrigerator, looked at the time and realized I would have to rush to complete dinner in time. I looked at the food which Tina hadn't destroyed but remained in the refrigerator and decided tonight would be a Mexican fajita night. I began by making the guacamole but used yogurt and a little mustard instead of mayonnaise, and added some lemon juice to keep it from turning brown. I wanted to make my own chips, but there wasn't time, so I settled for bland chips without added sugar in them. I began to cook the chicken breast in a big skillet along with mini green peppers and onions, added some fajita seasoning, which didn't have sugar, and finished just as I heard the front door open. Louise, Brenda, and Gwen walked in. I was glad I made extra food tonight. The girls ran to them and got big hugs and kisses. Brenda asked, "How was it today?" I replied, "Tina made a mess out of things, but finally got hungry enough to eat this afternoon. So she might not be hungry tonight." Gwen and Brenda sat at the table. Louise offered, "Let me help." I handed her the guacamole and a big bag of chips and requested, "Put this on the table and tell the women not to fill up on it too much." Louise sat it on the table and ordered. Masha said not to eat too much of this since she doesn't want you to puke like last night. Gwen remarked, "This is really good, but I don't think it has mayonnaise in it." I replied, "That's correct. Mayonnaise has too many calories and too much sugar in it. This has plain yogurt with a little mustard in it." Brenda remarked, "Tina seems to want some of this to eat." I handed Louise a bowl and said, "Give her some in this bowl." I finished the chicken, put some into the blender for the children, without the onions and green peppers, ground it up, and put in some bowls. Louise helped me take the bowls to the table. Linda saw the food and began making number sounds again. So Louise sat down and began to feed Linda. I brought the fajitas to the table in a cast iron skillet with some tortillas and said, "Enjoy." Tina motioned for some of the fajitas, so I suggested, "Brenda, try seeing if Tina will eat the fajitas." Tina took a bite of fajita, gave a funny look, and then wanted more. Brenda remarked, "Masha, you're a miracle worker." I cautioned, "Brenda, this was only the first day. We still have many more days of trial until Tina won't demand only fruit for her meals." Everyone remarked how good the food was as I cautioned, "Make sure you only eat 3 fajitas tonight. I don't want any accidents again during Tebow." We finished, and both Gwen and Brenda remarked, "Masha, we're still a little hungry." I smiled at them and said, "Good. Don't worry because the exercise will take away your extra hunger pains." Tebow went better tonight because they weren't as full. Flashback, Jennifer, the hospital. I woke up in the morning, thought I remembered that grandma came, touched the back of my head, and knew it was true. It was so good having a grandmother who could do things like heal me. I just wished that Mother got along with her. I know there was going to be a little fight today when Mother figured it out. I sat up in bed and quickly decided that I smelled and needed a shower. I was in the shower having a good time when the door opened and the nurse shrieked, "Jennifer, you shouldn't be showering. You might get the incision from your operation wet." I stuck my head out of the shower curtain and said, "Don't worry, the bandage fell off last night and is on the bed." She grabbed my arm, yanked me out of the shower, and yelled, "You could die from this." I turned, showed her the back of my head with the hair regrown, and asked, "Really?" "I don't think so." She touched the back of my head and said, "I don't understand. Your hair is back." She felt around the area and remarked, "The hole is even gone." I asked, "I hate these stupid gowns. Could I possibly get some scrubs?" The nurse said, "I understand about the gowns, but for now you need to put on your old gown and return to your bed. I will find you some scrubs." I complained, "Okay, but if my gown makes me smell bad again, I'm taking another shower." I put on the nasty gown, got back into bed. The doctor came in and asked, "Jennifer, I heard something from the nurse I couldn't believe." She told me. I interrupted by turning my head and said, "Take a look for yourself." He swore, "How in the hell did your hair grow back?" Then he touched the back of my head and added, "And the burr hole is gone." "What the hell?" he demanded. "Jennifer, how did this happen?" I didn't lie when I answered, "A good witch came to my room last night and fixed me." He blinked and said, "That's not possible." The nurse came in with the scrubs and I asked, "Doctor, I still stink from this gown, so I'm going to shower and put on these scrubs." The nurse demanded, "Doctor, her care orders need to be updated." He took my chart, wrote some things on it, and the nurse said, "Jennifer, you can shower now." I took the scrubs, went into the shower, and was having a great time until the door opened and Mother walked in. She said, "Jennifer, tell me the truth. Was my mother here last night?" I poked my head around the shower curtain and said, "Of course she was, Mother. Unlike you, she cared enough to heal me." Mother swore, "Jennifer, you don't know the danger that you—" I interrupted, "Mother, you and I will always disagree on this, so just accept the fact that I'm healed and ready to go home." Mother said, "Jennifer, they aren't going to let you go until they figure this out." I came out of the shower, dried off, and explained, "Mother, they won't have a choice. Daddy will take me home." Mother threatened, "We will see about that." However, I knew that Daddy already felt badly about the military academy happenings and would be more than happy to take me home. I walked out of the bathroom and Daddy said, "Jennifer, I hear it's a miracle that you're healed." I smiled at Daddy and said, "Not only that, I'm ready to go home." Mother came out of the bathroom and said, "Glenn, I don't think that's a good idea until the doctors check her completely." Daddy smiled and said, "Evelyn, don't be crazy. She's fine and it's a miracle. I'm taking her home." Mother knew better than to fight with Daddy, so we went to the car and headed home. Flashback, Alexei, back in his room. It sounded like the hallway was being destroyed. The banging on the walls was intense, and there were more swear words than I had ever heard in my life. Finally, a fist came through the wall, and I really began to get worried. I heard a knock on the door, and Father said, "Alexei, hurry, we need to get out of this madhouse." I ran to the door, opened it. Father grabbed my hand, and we ran like crazy. I looked back over my shoulder and noticed there was blood everywhere, and the orderlies and psychologist had knocked each other unconscious. Father said, "Alexei, I'm not sure why everyone went so insane, but we need to leave to protect ourselves." I couldn't resist when I asked, "Father, what about Mother?" Father answered, "Alexei, you're correct. We will gather her on the way out." We arrived at Mother's room. The door was open and Mother was doing disgusting sexual things with many of the orderlies. Father again yanked my arm and said, "Alexei, your mother is lost to us." We ran outside, got into the car, and drove to the house. I noticed some tears in Father's eyes as he drove. Flashback, Mira and Ira, continuing. Night had fallen, and it was time to go on the hunt. We were not concerned because of our appraisal of the total ineptitude exhibited by Kostia's men, and we were not surprised. We found a large group of them sitting around a huge fire, heavily drinking vodka and daring to laugh about what they would do to us once they caught us. I looked at Ira and suggested with a whisper, "Soon the vodka will render them even more inept. We should delay until that time to stage our attack." Ira developed a brilliant plan. Mira, with their senses dulled to the extent they are, we could pretend to be wild fauna, as this would further confuse them. I replied in whisper, "Ira, we must disguise ourselves." We moved away from the gathering of bumbling idiots and began to assemble suitable monster apparel. The rabble ceased their vocalizations due to advanced intoxication, so I beheld Ira and declared, "Now." I was proud to say we attacked with the ferocity of injured wild animals. Kostia's men did not know what to do as they had placed their weapons a great distance from them, and we emerged from the forest between them and their weapons. Our cacophony was so great that several of the men unintentionally relieved their bladders while others exited the clearing screaming like young girls. We brutalized the ones who remained so it would appear wild animals had indeed attacked. Then we gathered some of their weapons, We did not acquire all because wild animals do not need weapons, stripped off any clothing which fit us, and disappeared into the night. We left unmolested the ones who fled so they could engender fear into the hearts of their compatriots. Flashback, Todd, on the mission. Maria didn't want Gail to know she had stayed the night, so she got up early and returned to her room. I woke up, took a shower, and waited for the realtor. She arrived on time with the paperwork and also breakfast, which was good because we didn't have anything to eat in the house. I looked over the paperwork and saw it was in order, so I signed it. I motioned to Maria and the realtor's bodyguard. We moved to the side of the room where I signed, and Maria translated. "You look like you know how to take care of yourself. How would you like to earn some extra money today?" He replied, "I need to clear it with my boss first." He went and talked to the realtor while we waited. He returned and said, after I take her back to her office, she said I could take the whole day off. "What are your plans?" I signed to him about several things, and Maria's eyes got big at some of them. He smiled and said, "This should be fun. It has been a very long time since I've seen some action." He left to take the realtor back to her office and said, "I will be back with what you requested." Maria asked, "Todd, are you sure you want to do this?" I simply signed, "Damn sure." We waited for the bodyguard to return. Present, Ben, Jens, and others, a few days later. We've worked our butts off the last few days getting ready to leave. First, we had to make sure Sifs had the truck and semi-trailer for us. Jens, Mira, and Ira had to sneak away several times to make sure it was to their liking. It finally was. Then we get Tom up to speed on the remodeling of the cabin. One of the first things we did was haul my truck away. I was sad to see her go, but she died saving our lives. Then we reinforced the front gate. The new gate was made from highway guardrail. Hell, it would take a tank to penetrate the front gate now. Destiny had called in a few other wolves, and they were patrolling the cabin area, which made me feel better. Tom pulled a background check on all the workers, found a couple that had some issues, and they were dismissed. He, of course, deputized me, Jens, Mira, Ira, and our 2 alternate drivers. Jens and Gretchen came up with some great drones to help give us an overview of wherever we would be. They also came up with a secure as hell phone and computer system, so we could still communicate with the outside world, but remain untracked. None of this was, of course, in the motorhome, since it was only a ruse to keep the terrors busy. We made sure to rent the most common motorhome on the rental market and made sure to never let the license plates be seen. Everything was in the SIF semi-trailer, and we would drive the motorhome first thing to a garage, where we would exchange it for the semi-trailer. We did, however, carry drones and the remote transmitters to operate them, just in case. I had asked Mira and Ira what sort of weapons we were bringing, but they just smiled and told me not to worry. I demanded, "I want my 10mm 1911. Again, they smiled but agreed. Finally, it was time for us to leave. Present, Samantha, and others, a couple days later. Let's see, what did I forget to tell you? Oh yeah, I didn't say anything about the suicide bomber who attacked me. The CBI showed up, took a look at the guy, and first they wondered what had happened to him since he had scratched himself so badly he was missing much of his skin. That made them wonder if he was infected with something. So they didn't bother trying to disarm the suicide vest. They thought they might catch what he had. Instead, they carefully put him into a body bag, then into a huge steel bomb transport container, and even put their bomb disposal uniforms in the container, and finally hauled the container to a vacant field. We entered a nearby vacant building, then they cleared the area and detonated the suicide vest. I was glad we were in a vacant building because with the top of the transport container being open, the ball bearings from the suicide vest rained down on the area for about 5 minutes. The CBI bomb squad was thoroughly impressed with the blast and said if it had been detonated in the restaurant, we would all be dead, along with all the patrons and staff. I followed them to the cabin where they examined what was left of Ben's truck and the car bomb. They stated that Ben was lucky as hell he didn't get blown to pieces. The biggest thing was that I had determined I needed to be careful about what I reported on Ben and Jennifer. Therefore, I hadn't done a single report on them since the attack, even though the public was clamoring for a report. They would get their report today, and then I had no idea when I could do another report. We drove to the cabin to find Ben and Jennifer standing beside a motorhome. John and I walk up as I ask, "Are you two ready for our interview?" Ben says, "Hell yes, let's get this over with." Jennifer is more calm and replies, "Thank you, Samantha. We can only hope the wrong people are watching this report." I knew what she meant. I nodded John. He starts the camera, and I begin my report. "Good morning, America. Samantha Stevens from the Truth Network with the report we've all been waiting for. Ben and Jennifer are finally leaving to finish their honeymoon." I wanted to say at Disneyland, but Disneyland threw a huge fit when they actually thought that Ben and Jennifer might visit there. Ben slaps the side of the motorhome and in an unusual, for him, manner says, "That's right. This baby is going to be our home for the next few weeks." Jennifer hugs Ben and says, "This is what I've always wanted, some serious alone time with Ben." I hate to ask the next question, but I know I need to sell the story. So, where are you guys going? Jennifer smiles and says, well, we wanted to go to Disneyland, but they are concerned about possible terror issues, so for right now, we're not sure where we are going. Ben adds, I've been thinking I might want to see the southern area of the United States. Jennifer chirps in, that sounds great to me. I continue with my questions. Do you have any plans to stay at hotels? Jennifer smiles and answers, of course. Even though this is a great motorhome, the shower isn't the best or the largest. I believe we will be stopping every third or fourth night in a hotel. Ben adds, don't forget, we will need to stop for other reasons, like buying more food and taking care of the water requirements on the motorhome. Jennifer hugs Ben and says, thanks for reminding me. You're right. Ben says, well, daylight's burning. Thanks for the interview. We'll talk again when we get back. They climb into the motorhome, and we video it leaving, being careful to not reveal the license plate. Liz comes up and says, good job, Sam. So how does it feel being a part owner of the Truth Network? I smile at Liz and gush. It's like one of my dreams come true. Liz smiles and asks, and the other is your castle? I grin and nod in reply. Yes, life is good. I pray that Ben and Jennifer will have a good and peaceful life too. Liz concurs, yes, they deserve it. Well, your report should go a long way in helping them. I frown and say, I sure hated having to do it, knowing the terrors were going to use it against Ben and Jennifer. Liz makes me wonder when she says, Samantha, don't worry. You didn't really give the terrors any information. Present, Ben, Jens, Mira, and Ira, on the road. I look over at Jens, smile and say, I think that went off well. Jen complains, when the heck did you get so talkative? I ask, what the hell are you talking about? Jens mimics, this is going to be our home for the next few weeks. Then continues the mimicry. I thought we might visit the southern states. I laugh and ask, is that what I really sound like? Mira comes forward and enters the debate. Ms. Blaine does a partially accurate rendition of your voice. I don't know what to say when Ira interrupts. I oculate no vehicles following us. Jens' phone rings. She looks at it and explains, it's Gretchen. She answers the phone and Jens says, great Gretchen, please continue to have the drone follow us until we reach the garage. Jens looks at Mira, then turns her head to the back to look at Ira and asks, would you two like to learn to speak English? Mira confounds Jens by saying, Ms. Blaine, we speak perfect English. I chuckle as Jens responds, Mira, you and Ira use such archaic terms that sometimes people find it difficult to understand you. Mira counters, Ms. Blaine, we are not assured you are correct. Ira further confounds us. Yes, Ms. Blaine, we never seem to have issues with the comprehension of others. I begin to laugh, and Jens complains, Ben, you're not helping. This time it's my turn, so I mimic Jens. Ben, you're not helping. Mira and Ira both giggle, and Jens complains, now I know I don't sound like that. Mira surprises us when she almost perfectly mimics Jens. Ben, you're not helping. Jens says, wow, now that was good. How did you two learn to do that? Ira states, it is one of many things which you do not know about us. Then Ira does a shockingly good imitation of Liz. I look at Jens, and Jens continues, well, if you can mimic people so well, why can't you speak correctly? I know we are stuck in an almost endless loop with Jens and the twins, because this isn't the first time they've had this conversation. The conversation drones endlessly on until we finally make it to Denver. I begin to think about where we're going to go first until my thoughts are interrupted. Ira states, I perceive a vehicle possibly following us. Jens pulls up her phone and makes the call we hoped we wouldn't have to make. She puts the call on the speaker and informs Gretchen, we might have picked up a tail. Gretchen says, wait a minute, let me get the drone to the right location. Gretchen orders, please make a right turn. I comply and wait until Gretchen orders, take another quick right. I barely make the turn in time. The tires on the shitty motorhome squeal, then we wait for further information. Gretchen states, you most certainly have a car tailing you. Tom and I had come up with a plan because we figured this would happen, so I order, implement plan Alpha 1, repeat, implement plan Alpha 1. I take a quick left turn, return to our original route, and slow up some, allowing our tail to catch up a bit. Ira suggests, Mr. Blaine, I could easily eliminate the driver and passenger. I counter, Ira, I know that you could easily do that. However, that also might detonate the car bomb. Please be patient and wait for the plan to unfold. Ira informs me, Mr. Blaine, I will wait. However, if the vehicle approaches too closely to the motorhome, I will terminate both of them. I make another quick turn, so we are now on an empty street, provided by the FBI counterterrors unit. I floor the motorhome. It coughs and sputters, but finally picks up speed. Ira informs us. I oculate the FBI deploying the spikes of strips. The terror car following us hits the spike strip and Gretchen says over the phone, the vehicle has been disabled. There's a bright flash behind us and Gretchen swears, the scumsuckers blew up my drone. Mira, please deploy the backup drone. Mira opens the side window, holds up the drone, and Gretchen takes over. Mira announces, backup drone device correctly deployed. I voice my concerns. Were there any injuries? Ira replies, the FBI had not approached the vehicle, so the only loss of Allied forces appears to be the drone surveillance device. Of course, the offending terrors have maladroitly been destroyed. Jens wonders, do you think there will be more attacks? I slow the motorhome down to a safer speed and say, yeah, I expect at least one, but possibly two more attacks. Tom comes on the phone and agrees, you're about right in that estimate. According to the estimated size of the terror cell the FBI uncovered, they probably have resources for a couple more attacks. Just remember, the next ones might not be as easy as this one since they will know that you took out the first group. Jens complains, Ben, I sure as heck don't want to die in this stinky motorhome. Tom attempts to encourage us. Jennifer, don't give up just yet, because you're only about 20 minutes from the garage. Plus, you guys are doing a hell of a service for America by flushing out this previously unknown terror cell. Jens continues the complaint, Tom, I've done my service to America, and now I am ready for someone else to take over. I prepare to answer when Ira reports, Mr. Blaine, I oculate a new vehicle following us. Gretchen confirms, that's correct, and it's gaining on you. I again floor this piece of shit motorhome. As it slowly accelerates, I swear, come on you pig. Move it. Ira begins to count off the distance. Vehicle at 500 meters. Vehicle now at 450 meters. I am pressing as hard as I can on the accelerator, but it's not helping. The terrors are gaining on us. Ira announces, vehicle at 400 meters and still gaining. I make a decision and order, Ira, take them out. I really didn't want to tip our hand that we had weapons on board to any possible terrors, but I didn't have a choice. I don't have to repeat myself as Ira's rifle barks twice and she reports, targets eliminated. There's a huge flash behind us as the car detonates with a force so powerful that the motorhome finally accelerates. Tom says, damn, that explosion was twice as big as the first. Good thing you had Ira take them out before they got any closer. I reply, yeah, the blast actually kicked this motorhome in the butt, and we're finally moving. Tom reports, we finally found the scumsucker calling in your position. He was on the rooftop of one of the buildings. Tom emphasizes was in such a way that we know he's now gone off to find his virgins. Tom continues, I hate to tell you this, but we have a big problem. Flashback, Ben, back at the formerly captured hospital. I called my improvised sniper team, complete with the M25S, over and ordered. The scumsuckers are using the remaining piece of that building to hide behind. I pointed to the wall, which was about 5 feet high. I continued, I'm going to use the M107 to start blowing some holes in the wall, and the fragments from the wall should kill most of the scumsuckers. The ones who try to escape will make great practice targets for you 5 to clean up. Are there any questions? One of the snipers raised his hand and asked, what's the range to the wall? I looked at the rest of the team and asked, please tell me that one of you can figure out the range to the wall. They started scanning with their scopes, and one of them said, I'm getting .52 mils on a dead scumsucker's chest. He looked at his sheet and estimated, that gives a range of about 900 yards. I pulled up my laser rangefinder, zapped the wall, and confirmed, that's pretty good. This says 908 yards. We set up on the edge of the roof with 2 of my improvised sniper team set up too close to the M107, so I ordered, you 2 need to back off a bunch. The M107 has a tank-style muzzle brake on it, and the blast from it comes back on both sides. We were finally set up, so I slapped a magazine into the M107, took aim midway down the wall, and touched off the first round. A cloud of red mist curled up over the wall, so I knew I had made some kills. I began to empty the magazine into the wall until the scumsuckers finally figured out they were not safe anymore and began to exit at each end of the wall. My improvised sniper team was waiting for them and started to mow them down. I made sure to watch the team and figured out which one was the best shot. George walked up and said, damn Ben, that was something to watch. It worked perfectly, so I guess we won't have to worry about them hiding behind that wall again. I smiled at George and corrected his guess. Sir, they will be back, so we will need to clear them out every hour or so. George said, I'm glad you're here to do that. I replied, sorry sir, but I'm handing the M107 off to the best sniper we have here. I have the recon mission that we talked about earlier to complete. I could tell George didn't like it, but I already knew that Colonel Maggie would approve, so I wasn't worried. I called the best sniper over, gave him instructions on the M107, and ordered, about every hour fire a few rounds through the wall. He answered with a bit of a grin, yes SGT. I walked around until I found the corporal who had Jack's spotting scope, walked up to him, and asked, you told me you watched for the suicide bombers. Which direction did they come from? He pointed toward a building about 4 blocks away and said, they all seemed to run from that direction. I briefly thought about having George call in a fire mission on the building, but I wanted to capture the scumsucker who was strapping the vests on young girls and boys. I looked at the corporal hanging onto Jack's scope and asked, "Have you ever done a recon mission?" He replied, "No, Sergeant, but I can be pretty damn quiet when I need to be." I smiled at him and said, "Okay, hand Jack's spotting scope off to someone you can trust, and let's gear up for a recon mission." He was back in about 5 minutes, and we began to check each other for anything that made noise. I taped the straps on his pack because they made a hell of a noise. Then I took a piece of duct tape and taped his dog tags to his chest. He began to complain until I said, "Look, if we get caught, we're dead anyway." We loaded up with a load of grenades, making sure to tape the handles so they wouldn't rattle. I finally grabbed a military taser and put it in one of my mall pouches. The corporal asked, "What's that for?" I replied, "If we catch this scumsucker, he's going to wish he was dead." I put on my ghillie suit, handed one to the corporal, and ordered, "Put this on and pretend you're a bush." We were ready, and I suggested to George, "A distraction right now might be a good idea. Just make sure they don't shoot us." George got the majority of the men to start firing while the corporal and I hauled out the door, hit the ground, and began to crawl toward cover. We got behind a wall, stopped, and took a breather. I asked, "How are you doing?" He swore, "Shit, I need to take a piss." I laughed and ordered, "Welcome to being a recon. Now take your piss." The corporal asked, "In my suit? Won't they smell me?" I laughed and replied, "Hell, they all smell worse than your piss, so don't worry about it. Now let's move." We began to crawl again toward the direction the corporal gave me. I heard something and froze. Thank God the corporal did the same. I heard someone giving instructions to someone else. I finally figured out it was the a-hole who created the vests. He had just loaded up another poor girl with a vest and was going to send her toward the hospital. I slipped the military taser out of my mall pouch, slipped my hand out from under my ghillie suit, made sure I was close enough, and tagged the scumsucker with the taser. He went down and began to shake like an aspen leaf in the wind. The young girl had no idea what was happening, and she began to take off her suicide vest. I yelled, "No, don't." But it was too late, and the vest exploded. I shocked out of the scumsucker again just because I felt like it. Then we crawled up to the scumsucker. I got a good look at him, and it made me sick because he wasn't Taliban. Hell, he was as white as I was. A traitor, that's what we had found. I shocked him again because it made me feel better. Then I said to the corporal, "We need to let this traitor wake up so we can have him take us to his bomb factory." The corporal replied, "Sergeant, there is no way we can trust him to take us to his bomb factory. I say we kill the traitor and have the artillery blow the hell out of this area." I got a better idea, so I pulled up his man dress, put a new cartridge in the taser, and connect the probes into his genitals. When I was finished, I shocked him just to see what happened. He literally jumped 3 feet off the ground. Then I searched the shit out of him to make sure he was not hiding any weapons. I told the corporal, "We're going to march this son of a bitch back to the hospital and let George interrogate him." I was kneeling beside him as he awoke and whispered, "If you say anything, I'm going to shock you to death. Now stand up and slowly march toward the hospital." He mouthed off, "Go to hell, you mother." I shocked the shit out of him, and he passed out again, so we waited for him to wake up. He finally came to, and I said, "Now stand up and slowly march toward the hospital." This time he did what he was told, but because the corporal and I were crawling, I did have to slow him down several times. We approached the hospital, and I ordered, "Put your hands over your head so you don't get shot." He raised his hands, and thank God no one shot him. One of the men called to me, "Sir, you'd better come see this." I moved to his side of the building and saw a man walking toward the hospital, and damn. Beside him are 2 ghillie suits crawling toward us on the ground. The Marine who called me over asked, "Should I shoot the scumsucker?" I replied, "If you do that, the sergeant is going to be pissed off at you. Can't you see the bushes beside him that are moving?" I hauled downstairs and met Ben at the entrance to the building. He handed me the taser and said, "This is connected to his genitals. If he gives you any shit, shock out of him." I asked, "Who the hell is he?" Ben said, "He's the scumsucker who has been building the suicide vests. Not only that, I think he's British." Our prisoner swore, "I'm not telling you anything." He never got to finish because Ben reached over and activated the taser, and he fell to the ground unconscious. While he was down, Ben kicked him a couple times. I complained, "Sergeant, that's not within the parameters of the Geneva Convention." Ben replied, "Sir, he and all of the scumsuckers don't give a flying shit at a rolling donut about the Geneva Convention." Then he suggested, "Why don't you get on the horn with Colonel Maggie and let her know of the enemy we've captured?" It made sense to me, so I called Colonel Maggie and was surprised as hell. Flashback, Jack and John, back at the base. We halted HQ, and then I did some major bullshitting and got us a refrigerated semi. I drove it over to Supply, did a bunch more bullshitting, and had it loaded to the gills with fresh food. We hauled back to our base just in time for me to head to work. John asked, "Sergeant, can I use some of this food to cook breakfast?" I laughed and said, "Of course, that's what we stole it for." John replied, "Thank you so much, Jack." I will bring you and the Colonel some food when I'm finished. I walked into Colonel Maggie's office and she asked, Jack, what's this I hear? We're interrupted when John walked into the office with 2 plates of food. Colonel Maggie asked, what's this? John smiled and replied, just a little breakfast I whipped up. It's called Eggs Benedict. Colonel Maggie looked at it, then sniffed it, and said, does this have anything to do with reports I've started to hear about last night? I didn't wait and dug into mine. It was damn good. Colonel Maggie finally tasted hers, smiled, and said, Jack, don't worry. Last night is already forgiven. John said, sir, I wanted to prove to you and the men that I can cook if HQ doesn't send me garbage to cook with. Colonel Maggie praised him. John, this is as good as any food I have ever eaten. John suggested, sir, you didn't try the coffee. That reminded me I didn't try mine. I took a sip, smiled, and said, now that's a hell of a cup of coffee. The Colonel tried her coffee, then asked, John, why is this so much better than what you served in the mess? I cleared my throat and suggested, sir, you really don't want to know. John scored big points when he said, for lunch today, we're having chicken cordon bleu. Colonel Maggie put down her fork, looked at John, and again apologized. John, I'm sorry for all the grief I gave you about the food. You're a hell of a cook. Then she looked at me and said, Jack, if HQ doesn't send us better food, feel free to take one of your midnight trips anytime. John asked, sir, am I still the cook, or do you want me to continue to be Jack's aide? Colonel Maggie said, John, get back to the kitchen where you belong. John left with a big smile on his face while the Colonel turned to me and said, Jack, my phone's been ringing all morning about your little stunt last night. You took a big risk, but it certainly paid off since now I can tell the scumsuckers at HQ that they were the cause of our food problems. But tell me, why is the coffee so good? I smiled at her and shared the secret. Sir, we sort of borrowed the General's private stash of coffee. Colonel Maggie laughed her butt off and said, the shitbird deserves it for sending us rotten food. Colonel Maggie's phone rang, and she said, shit, that's probably him now. She answered the phone, waved me over, put the phone on speaker, and said, Lieutenant, please repeat what you just told me. I hear George say, sir, Ben and a corporal just captured a Taliban who is the bomb maker of the suicide vests. It also sounds like he might be from Great Britain. Colonel Maggie praised him. Lieutenant, you're doing a hell of a job. Sit on him for now. I need to contact HQ on this, and they will probably send some interrogators to talk to him. George also said, sir, we're going to call in another fire mission since Ben is sure we know where the bomb maker's building is. Colonel Maggie ordered, son, shell the hell out of the whole area. She hung up the phone, smiled at me, and said, Jack, Sergeant Blaine capturing that Taliban probably just saved our butts with HQ. Why don't you go catch some shut-eye while I give them a call? I smiled and requested, sir, I would like to be here when you talk with them. She called HQ and requested to be connected with the general. He came on the phone and swore, Colonel, did you know some of your sons of a bitch, Marine stole my coffee last night? Colonel Maggie grinned at me and lied her butt off. No, sir. I had no idea that happened, however I will look into it. Her eyes sparkled as she took a drink of the general's coffee. Then she said, sir, the reason I'm calling you is because Sergeant Blaine and another Marine did a recon mission and captured what they are saying is a Taliban bomb maker. Not only that, they say he sounds like he's from Great Britain. There's a short pause, and the general asked, I assume he's being held at the hospital? Colonel Maggie replied, yes, sir, he is. I thought that HQ might want to send some interrogators to the hospital. He said, Colonel, this is bigger than you can imagine. I need to contact someone higher up the chain than me to make this decision. Call your team back and make sure they do everything they can to keep him alive. What a hell of a recon mission. Personally, thanks Sergeant Blaine for me. I could tell Colonel Maggie couldn't resist as she asked, General, which would you like me to do first? Look for your coffee or call the hospital? He said, don't be a shit about this. Call the hospital. She hung up the phone, took another sip of coffee and laughed. Damn, now that was fun. I yawned and said, yes, sir. You handled that masterfully. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to get some sleep. Colonel Maggie ordered, Jack, get your flabby butt out of my office. I left and headed to my room, but made one stop on the way. Flashback. Masha, the next morning. I had just woken up, realized I hadn't heard from Jack for a couple days, and was worried about him. I started to get out of bed when the phone rang and scared me. I carefully answered, and it was as if Jack had heard my plea when he said, Masha, my love, how are you doing? I giggled and said, Jack, I'm doing much better. I'm keeping busy during the days taking care of the cutest little girl named Linda, and then at night some women come over, and we do Tebow and yoga. Now, Jack, please tell me the truth. How are you doing? Jack replied, Masha, the doctors say that I'm healing fine and I'm back in my own room, which I share with Ben. And next week Colonel Maggie is going to have me training some new recruits. I asked Jack, please thank that colonel of yours for taking care of the problem with the terrible teenagers. Jack asked, how are you feeling about what you had to do? I replied, Jack, I've been so busy I don't think about it very often. Jack, I love you so much. Jack said, I forgot to tell you, Masha. I might go up in rank, which will mean more money for us. Masha said, Jack, have you forgotten I can't get to any of our money? I am still using the money that Ben left. Jack swore, son of a bitch, I did forget about that. Let me see if I can do something about that from here. I love you, Masha, but my time's up for today. I will try to call again tomorrow. The phone woke up Louise, and she asked, was that Uncle Jack? I laughed and said, yes, it was. I was just getting worried because I hadn't heard from him. Louise asked, Masha, are you having money problems? I said, Louise, Jack forgot to set up access for me to our bank accounts before he left. Ben, you remember I talked about him before, left $10,000 for me, so that's what I've been living on. But Jack promised to get things taken care of with the bank. Louise offered, Masha, I would gladly pay rent if you need it. I waved her off and said, thank you, but it's not needed. However, I do need the bathroom before our morning exercise. I got ready for Tebow and yoga, came out of the bathroom, and Louise and Linda were also ready. We went out to the garage and worked out. I looked at my watch and said, we need to get ready for Brenda and Tina. Louise asked, Masha, how bad was it with Tina yesterday? I shook my head and said, it was terrible. I'm sorry I offered to do this for her. Louise said, you can always quit. I smiled and said, not for any reason will I do that. I am not a quitter. Louise went to clean up while I made breakfast for us. Today we were having plain yogurt with some natural, sugar-free granola in it. I was certain that Tina wouldn't like it, and I hoped that she threw the same fit this morning that she did with me yesterday at lunch. Brenda needed to see how terrible the sugar addiction was. Brenda arrived at the house, brought Tina in, and Tina immediately began to cry. Brenda said, I wonder what's wrong with her? I smiled because I knew. She hated the fact that I wouldn't feed her fruit. Louise came out of the bathroom with Linda. Linda saw Tina crying and said, Tina, bad girl. Louise and Brenda were shocked, and Brenda asked, what does Linda mean? I said, yesterday Tina got into the refrigerator and ruined much of the food. I accidentally said that Tina was a bad girl, and I guess Linda picked up on that. Brenda apologized. Masha, I had no idea Tina did that. I'm very sorry. I sat the yogurt in front of Brenda and suggested, you try feeding Tina today. Tina was in her high chair and still whimpered a bit like yesterday. Brenda took the yogurt to the high chair, set it in front of Tina, and said, look, baby doll, a great breakfast for you. Tina took one look at it, determined it wasn't fruit, began to cry, grabbed the bowl, and threw it at Brenda. It hit Brenda right on top of the head. I had to fight back a giggle when the yogurt ran down her hair. Brenda swore, Tina, you little bitch. That was bad. Now mommy is all dirty. Then Brenda apologized. Masha, I'm sorry about the mess. I inwardly smiled, but said, Brenda, this shows you how acute Tina's addiction to sugar is and how it affects her. Brenda looked down and confessed, Masha, I didn't realize how bad it was. She was hungry last night, so I gave her some fresh fruit to eat. Louise asked, Masha, did this happen to you yesterday? I glared at Brenda and declared, Brenda, any fruit right now. Even fresh fruit defeats what we are trying to do. Please never give her fruit again. Then I answered Louise, yes. Tina threw her lunch on the floor and then spit it on me when I tried to feed her again. I handed Brenda a dish towel, and she began to wipe the yogurt off her head. Brenda again apologized. Masha, I'm so sorry. Are you still sure you want to do this? I asked Brenda, Brenda, is breaking Tina's fruit addiction something you can do? Brenda confessed, no, Masha, I'm not strong enough. Plus, I'm working all day, and my babysitter doesn't understand. I thought for a moment and asked, what is your babysitter doing this week? Brenda said, she took a vacation. I simply said, if your babysitter does not listen to your directions, you should fire her. Brenda complained, but it's so hard finding a good babysitter. I'm not lucky like Louise. I don't have an Aunt Masha to watch Tina. I said, well, you do this week, so let's break Tina's sugar addiction. There are guest towels in the bathroom that you can use if you want to shower. It made me happy when Brenda asked, but what about Tina's breakfast? I simply said, Tina will eat when she gets hungry enough. Until then, I'm not even going to try to feed her. Brenda left and Louise commented, wow, Masha, I didn't realize it was so bad. I replied, yes, it is an untenable situation. Unlike Linda, Tina is very strong-willed, and if Brenda doesn't take control now during the early years, when Tina is a teenager, she will have worse problems. I could tell that Louise was deep in thought as we finished our breakfast. Flashback, Jennifer headed home. I sat in the back and listened as Mother and Daddy fought. Mother said, Glenn, I don't think this is wise. Daddy said, Evelyn, stranger things have happened before in this family, so I'm sure not going to look this gift horse in the mouth. Mother tried to continue, so I interrupted. Daddy, can we listen to some music? Mother countered, Jennifer, we were trying to talk. I complained, no, You two were fighting, and that's why I wanted some music. Mother stated, Jennifer, behave, or... I interrupted again. Or what? You'll send me to a military academy? Huh. Been there, done that, and kicked its rear. Daddy looked at Mother and said, Evelyn, we need to continue this later. He turned on the music and asked, is that better? I whined. Only if we were at a funeral. How about some rock and roll? Daddy changed to a soft rock station, then I leaned back and enjoyed the ride home. We arrived home. Daddy opened the garage door, drove the car in, and Daniela ran out into the garage. She hugged me and said, Senorita Jennifer, it is good you are home. The news had many reports about that terrible school. I hugged her back and said, thank you for the food, by the way. She pulled away, smiled at me, and said, it was the least I could do. Then she realized something and said, but Senorita Jennifer, I thought they drilled a hole in your head and you were going to be in the hospital for weeks. I sure as heck didn't want to bring up the witch part with Daniela, so I said, there was some sort of miracle and I was healed. I turned my head and continued, look, my hair even grew back. Daniela remarked, Dios mío. I prayed for you, Miss Jennifer, and El Señor must have answered my prayers. Mother harumphed at that statement as Daniela continued, come inside, and I will make you a big breakfast. We all walked into the house. I went up to my room, sprawled on my bed, and thought about grandmother. Flashback, Alexei headed to the house. I hadn't been home in what seemed like forever, and it was going to be strange going there with Mother still in the clinic. I could tell how hurt Father was when he saw Mother doing sexual things with the orderlies, and wondered if Mother was ever going to come home. We walked into the house. It smelled bad, so I held my nose and complained, Father, what smells bad? Father apologized, sorry Alexei. No one had been here for many days, and I think that Chow Main's litter box needs to be emptied. Yes, Chow Mein had left us one parting gift. Father emptied Chow Main's litter box and opened the windows. I asked, Father, may I go to my room? Father replied, yes Alexei. Please prepare to go out since we need to get dinner. I went to my room and saw some of Chow Main's toys. I felt a little sad and perhaps just a bit remorseful as I began to change my clothes. Flashback, Mira and Ira, continuing. After our victory of resounding, we also acquired a large amount of almost edible food. We determined to remove some food so the others would assume it was bears that attacked. From the copious quantities of vodka, we only took one bottle to use as an antiseptic. With our nighttime attack a success, we decided it would now be our modus operandi. We knew better than to retreat to our previous cave, so we continued walking until we discovered another cave. We retired for the evening, and I mentioned, Ira, please check my wound. Ira checked my wound and swore, son of a female Saluki. Mira, you have once again opened the wound. I looked at Ira and suggested, perhaps sutures are required? Ira concurred. Yes, that is the only way we can assure you will not reopen the wound. It is good that we acquired the vodka. I smiled, began to partake of the spoils of war, and agreed. Yes, it is. Flashback, Todd, on the mission. When the bodyguard returned, not only did he have the dilapidated car I requested, he had also changed clothes. It was obvious to me that he wore body armor under the work clothes. He said, they gave me hell at the front gate with this car, and the way I looked, and almost refused to allow me to enter. I smiled and signed, that's a good thing to know. Now we need to get to the airport, so I can retrieve my body armor and some more weapons. The bodyguard remarked, if you have a spare rifle it would help. I didn't want to tip my hand just yet, so we headed to the airport. I went to the lockers, took my locker key out of my pocket, unlocked the unit where I had stored my things, pulled out the duffel bag, and walked back to the car. I knocked on the trunk. The bodyguard came out, opened the trunk, put the duffel bag inside, and closed the trunk after I removed my own body armor. I took the front seat beside the bodyguard, started to put on my armor, and signed, what is your name? Maria translated, and he answered, Roberto. I wondered if you were ever going to ask. I signed some more which Maria translated, Roberto, if things go well today, I will have some other jobs for you. Roberto asked, what sort of jobs? I signed, I am going to have some things shipped here diplomatically to the embassy. I would need you to pick them up for me and store them in the panic room. Roberto figured it out and asked, are these things similar to what we just put in the trunk? I signed, yes, I need someone here I can trust, and I feel if I pay you well enough I can trust you. Roberto asked, I was so excited about the prospect for the action, I forgot to ask, how much am I making today? I signed and Maria translated. Her eyes went big when she relayed. Todd asked if $1,000 is enough. Roberto laughed, hell yes. My wife and boy will love the extras I can get them with this. That statement made me decide to give him even more. However, I didn't tell him. I had Roberto stop the car and open the trunk. I went back there and Roberto watched as I pulled C4 and a detonator out of the bag. He said, I think we have a surprise for some cojones. I pulled an M4 out of the bag with 3 extra mags and handed it to him. I put on my pistol and grabbed an M4 for myself and put 5 extra mags in my body armor carrier. I made sure to grab the duffel bag and bring it with me. Maria directed us into her old neighborhood. I have been in some terrible piece of shit places, and this neighborhood ranked right up there with the worst of them. Roberto stopped the car in front of an unpainted, dilapidated building. Maria said, "Todd, they are already watching us." I noticed the curtains had moved and signed, "Don't worry about anything, Maria. We are going into your apartment and come out with the items which are critical to you. Don't be surprised at our gunfire and the deaths that occur." Maria almost cried. "Todd, do not get yourself killed. And what about all my clothes? I will need them for the bank." I signed, "Don't worry about them. You and Gail can buy more clothes later today." Gail signed, "Todd, I'm scared." I signed, "Don't worry about it. We're going to be fine." We got out of the car and made sure to hold our rifles where they could not easily be seen. Then we walked up to Maria's door, and I was shocked when she opened it without a key. We walked inside the apartment, and I received a further shock. The apartment was totally different from the outside of the building since it was spotless. I motioned to Roberto to cover the door, and I followed Maria and Gail as they picked up some photos, knickknacks, and other assorted items and placed them in a box. Gail came out of her room with an armload of things which she put in a box. I signed, "Maria, tell Roberto that he will speak for me. Tell him when the men come he's to tell them that we're taking you away." Maria did as I asked, and Roberto nodded in agreement. So far things had gone smoothly, too smoothly. I took an item from the duffel bag and planted it on the floor. We walked out Maria's door and made it all the way to the street when a pretty damn nice car drove up. This was what I had counted on. They weren't going to attack us inside the apartment. They would wait until we were on the street. A fat scumsucker got out of the car and obviously said something insulting. I didn't like his attitude, so I shot him between the eyes. Then I pressed the button on the second detonator and Maria's apartment within the building disintegrated. The other car doors opened while Roberto and I began to fire at the men as they got out of the car. They never stood a chance. The whole battle lasted about a minute and was over. I grabbed Maria, Maria grabbed Gail, and we dashed to the now vacant new car. Roberto was already in the driver's seat as I kicked the dead scumsuckers out of the way. I loaded Maria and Gail into the back, jumped into the front with Roberto, and we took off. When we were a safe distance away, I pressed the button for the first detonator, and the piece of shit car blew up. Gail leaned forward and hugged the hell out of me while Maria pulled me around and kissed me on the lips. Roberto informed me, "I knew those cholos. They were supposed to be bad scumsuckers, but taking them out was easy." I signed, "It helps when you come prepared." Roberto said, "Yeah, this is a great rifle." I signed and Maria translated, "Keep it, it's yours." Roberto suggested, "We should ditch this car since it's well known in the city and we will attract too much attention." I signed, "We'll put the rifles back into the duffel bag. Can you drop us someplace safe and then come back for us in another car?" Roberto said, "How about I drop you at my family's restaurant? You should be safe there. I will give this car to my cousins since they know someone who will take off the good parts and destroy the rest." Gail signed, "Can I get something to eat?" Maria translated and Roberto laughed. "Of course, we have the best food in the city." Roberto dropped us at a nice-as-hell restaurant where we met his wife and little boy. They were a great family. Some boys excitedly got in the car with Roberto, and he sped away. Maria remarked, "Todd, I was so scared you were going to die today." I didn't get a chance to reply because Gail interrupted, "I'm hungry." I mimed a laugh and signed, "You're always hungry." Maria looked over a menu and ordered us some food. When it came, I tasted it, and it was great. Gail practically wolfed her food down, so I signed, "Where do you keep all that food? Someday you're going to get fat." She grinned and signed, "I'm like my sister Maria, I will never get fat." Gail was done and asked, "Can I go talk to the other kids?" Maria gave her permission, but I added, "Just make sure you don't get out of our sight." Gail signed, "Gee, you're worse than my sister." With Gail gone, I signed, "Maria, have you ever had a specialist look at Gail?" A few tears came to Maria's eyes as she answered, "Todd, we never had the money to do that. The fat man that you shot today took any extra money I made from the bank. We barely had enough money to eat. That's why Gail likes to eat so much." Hearing that made me glad I shot the fat scumsucker. Hell, I wished I would have shot him twice. I hugged Maria and signed, "When we get all settled, we need to have Gail looked at by a specialist." Maria said, "Todd, we already owe you too much." I smiled at Maria and signed, "Don't worry, you two watching my place for me will be payment enough." I was surprised when Roberto pulled up in the realtor's car and noticed as he exited the car, he was also back in his chauffeur's uniform. I signed with Maria translating, "What's going on? Do you need to get back to work?" Roberto said, "No, but this car and uniform make it easier for me to get through the gate at your new place." We picked up Gail, climbed in the car, and headed home. Present, Ben, Jens, and others. The trip to the garage. Tom continues, "I hate to tell you this, but we have a big problem. I swear, what is wrong now? Tom says, Ben, you have 2 terror vehicles ahead and closing fast toward you. Gretchen says, Ben, I will try to stop one of them with the drone. This was something we hadn't planned for. I think for a brief moment, in order, everyone grab something and hold on tight, especially Ira. I slam on the brakes, spin the wheel as hard as I can and pray like hell that this piece of shit motorhome doesn't tip over. Amazingly, it remains upright and my plan works. The rear wheels break loose. The end of this POS motorhome swings more than halfway around, and now we are headed away from the oncoming terrors. I floor the accelerator and we slowly accelerate. Jens remarks, Ben, that was incredible driving. Mira concurs, yes, Mr. Blaine. That performance was akin to viewing a cinema. We notice a flash behind us and Gretchen reports, Ben, I was successful in causing one of the terror vehicles to crash. However, now we are without drone coverage. Ira reports, male offspring of a female Saluki, Mr. Blaine. The vehicle is closing and is presently at 500 meters. The window explodes in the back of the motorhome, and Ira further reports, they have opened fire on our vehicle. May I have permission to return fire? I swear, hell yes, terminate them. Ira's rifle barks and she orders, Mira, your assistance is required. I ask, what the hell is wrong now? Mira replies, Mr. Blaine, it appears the terrors have armored the windscreen of their vehicle. There are only 2 small slots for them to jointly oculate the road and use as firing ports. Ira's and Myra's rifles bark and they complain. The slot is extremely small, and with the movement of this vehicle, it's almost impossible to fire through the slot. It also appears as if they have fortified the engine compartment, and thus firing into it produces no effect. Jens smiles at me, pulls up her purse from between the seats, and I ask, when did you start carrying a purse? Jens opens her purse, holds up a hand grenade and says, I thought a couple of these might possibly come in handy. I praise her brilliance. I could kiss you if I wasn't driving. Ira orders, Mr. Blaine, please do not play hockey of tonsil with Ms. Blaine while the terrors continue to close upon our position. I reply, Jens has several hand grenades in her purse. Please make use of them. Mira runs up, takes the 3 grenades from Jens and declares, this was a very wise idea, Ms. Blaine. Jens praises her. Mira, that was almost normal talking. As Ira tries the first hand grenade, we hear its explosion and Ira swears, male offspring of a female Saluki. The terrors operated their vehicle in a manner to avoid the grenade. Mira reports, and they continue to close. Ira orders, Mira, we will deploy both hand grenades simultaneously on opposite paths. Then they cannot avoid them. Jens says, I hope you're right, because those are our last 2 grenades. Suddenly, all hell breaks loose behind us. There are 2 huge explosions almost simultaneously, so I demand, what the hell was that? Ira informs me, Mr. Blaine, the terror vehicle exploded. Tom says, don't worry about that terror vehicle since the Predator drone following you took it out with an AGM-114. I asked, when the hell did we pick up a Predator drone, and wasn't it a little close to us to take it out with a Hellfire? Tom replies, don't look this gift horse in the mouth and be thankful for the support. Jens calms things down by saying, thanks, Tom. We are very thankful for the assistance. I'm still fuming as we finally reach the garage. Tom advises, Ben, no one has followed you or is watching you from the rooftops. Please make the vehicle exchange. I pull into the garage, and it's a hotbed of activity. I no sooner stop the motorhome than Jens, Mira, and Ira bail out the side door. My place is taken by an FBI agent who looks remarkably like me. He buckles in and hauls out the other end of the garage. The 4 of us are quickly moved to the semi-truck. The back doors are open, and as we get into the trailer, I'm left speechless. The doors are closed. I feel a small jerk and realize the semi is moving. Jens comes over and helpfully says, Ben, close your mouth or you might attract flies. Mira and Ira laugh and Ira mimics, Mr. Blaine, close your mouth or you might attract Diperta brachysura. I hug the hell out of Jens and ask, so, what's behind all the different doors? Mira excitedly asks, Ms. Blaine, might I give Mr. Blaine the grand tour? Jens says, sure Mira, have fun. I continue to hug Jens and reply, I think I'm bringing you with me. There's a big control panel in the middle of the room and approaching it Mira explains, this is communication and the drone device command and control. We have full-time encrypted internet access and can control up to 3 drone devices simultaneously. They are launched automatically from roof panels. Jens includes, we also have full-time video feeds for the cab of the truck and all sides of the trailer. Mira gives additional information, but best of all, the panel can be flipped over, like this, and it becomes a billiard table. Would you care to participate in a game? She uses one hand to flip the table and sure enough, it's a hell of a nice pool table. Mira continues, it even easily moves out of the way to provide us an exercise area. I shake my head about the game and reply, I'm not ready for a match right now, especially with the truck moving. Mira brags, Ira and I have a wager on which one of us defeats you in billiards first. I laugh and ask, what's the amount of the bet? Ira walks up and answers, a manicure and pedicure from the other participant. Jens complains, I already lost to both of them because they are really good. They proudly show off the manicures given by Jens. Mira continues, the room at this side of the trailer is the necessary room. We walk over to it, open the door, and I ask, a real bathtub and a shower, what in the hell? Jens says, yeah, we splurged on the tub, but I thought it might get some use. She hugs me, and I understand what she means. Mira says, we have a huge amount of water storage and can filter the water for reuse if necessary. I look at Mira and ask, even the water from the toilet? Mira explains, there is no water in the toilet since it is an incineration sanitary device. That makes me happy because the thought of drinking my own piss, even if it is filtered, doesn't appeal to me. We leave the bathroom, cross to the other side. Mira opens the door and says, this probably will not interest you, but it is the kitchen. Jens giggles and tells the twins, boy, are you wrong. Ben is a heck of a cook and loves to practice his art. I look at the range and ask, don't tell me that's a Gen Air range? Jens hugs me and says, of course it is. And before you ask, we have the griddle and the grill attachments. I rub my hands together and say, I can't wait to try out the grill. Jens further states, yeah, Ben can cook things on the grill that most people only dream of cooking on the stove. Mira continues, we have a fully functional refrigerator completely full of food items, plus a freezing unit which contains much meat. Jens adds, there's even some wild game in it. I hopefully ask, please tell me there's antelope in it. Jens hugs me and says, of course there is. I want some of your chili. Ira states, I do not believe that your chili is as spicy as Ms. Blaine has indicated. It would not even be edible if it was. I tell Ira, don't try to influence me to make chili tonight. I will make it when I'm ready. Mira walks to the front of the trailer and says, the door on the left is your bedroom unit. The right is our bedroom unit. They are both quite soundproof. I open the door to our bedroom, and it looks great, especially after I notice mirrors on the ceiling. I question, where are all the weapons? Mira laughs and says, you walked past them when you entered the trailer. We walk back, and along both side walls just inside the doors are cabinets. Mira opens them and says, the weapons are located in the cabinet by caliber, with the larger calibers being furthest from the door. I ask, is that a .50 caliber? Ira confirms, yes, Mr. Blaine, it is. You have a sharp eye? We walk across to the other cabinet. Mira opens it and says, these are all the bladed weapons. I notice they're katanas, plus other knives and throwing stars. One particular knife attracts my attention. I reach in, pull it out, look at Jens and comment, I thought this was destroyed in the cabin fire? Jens smiles and explains, girls, this is the K-bar knife that Ben carried when he was a Marine. And Ben, you are right, it was destroyed in both fires, so I had the leather handle replaced both times. I fight back some tears and say, I thought this was lost forever. Jens suggests, Ben, why don't you wear it now? I smile at Jens and say, not tonight, but later I will. Ira challenges, Mr. Blaine, I would love to challenge you in a martial arts competition. I reply to Ira, not tonight, but soon we will spar. I hug Jens, look at the girls and say, you all have done a wonderful job with the trailer. I can't think of anything else we would ever need. Now tell me why we're only staying gone for 2 weeks. Jens smiles and says, Ben, the FBI has found more terror cells which are looking for us. We're really not sure when we will be returning to the cabin. We will definitely not return until long after Tom has the cabin rebuilt. I reply, well, that's fine with me. Now there's only one thing missing. The girls give me a puzzled look and I ask, where's a barcalounger for me? Mira giggles and says, Mr. Blaine, did you not see the one in your bedroom? Jens adds, Ben, we each have one. I smile and say, hell, I might not want to ever leave this place. Present, Samantha and Stacy, Stacy's release. Bill and I made sure that Stacy's release from the mental hospital wasn't made public since I didn't want my BFF to deal with a media storm. We took one of the Summers Enterprises nondescript vans to pick her up, and I went inside to wait for her. It was longer than expected, but Stacy finally came out accompanied by a doctor. The doctor saw me and said, make sure that Ms. Summers continues to take her medicine. I replied, yes, sir. I will make sure she takes all her medicine. Stacy hugs me and says, it's good to see you, Sam. I hug her back and reply, it seemed like you were in here forever. Stacy comments, you should have seen it from in here. It was terribly boring. The only thing I had to look forward to was Bill's report each day. We walk outside. Stacy sees the van and asks, why no limousine? I reply, we wanted to keep your release private, so we felt the van would be better. Stacy admits, yeah, that's probably a better idea. She takes the front seat, and I take one of the back seats. Bill says, it's good to see you, Miss Summers. Stacy says, it's not as good as being out of there. There are some crazy people in that hospital. I think if I had stayed any longer, I would have gone crazy. Bill asks, do we need to pick up any prescriptions on the way home? Stacy shocks us when she says, hell the doctors and screw their prescriptions. Now that I'm out of that nut house, I'm not taking any of their shit. Bill asks a logical question, Ms. Summers, unless you are taking your prescription medicine, you will fail the monthly narcotic tests. You will violate your terms of release, and they will put you back into the clinic. Stacy thinks for a moment and says, I know. I will pay someone to take the narcotics for me and smuggle their urine into the clinic for the narcotic tests. Bill complains, Ms. Summers, do you feel that your grandmama would agree with that? Stacy ignores Bill's comment and continues, there's only one person I need to make things right for me, and that's Ben Blaine. Samantha, I saw your report about them leaving in a motorhome. When's the next report scheduled? I tell Stacy the truth. Stacy, there are no reports scheduled about them. They left because terrors were looking for Ben. Didn't you see the report from the cabin? Stacy replies, no Sam, they limited what I could watch on TV. Tell me about it. I smile at Stacy and say, I'll do better than that since I have a copy of it on my tablet. I pull out my tablet, fire it up, find the report, start watching it, and hand the tablet to Stacy. While she's watching it, I tell her, Ben came much closer to dying in this than you would believe since he was headed to his truck as the car bomb rammed it. Stacy asks, what other videos do you have on here? I reply, I have the one of the suicide bomber who almost killed me. I find the video, show it to Stacy, and she immediately asks, Bill, what in the hell are we doing about this? Bill replies, with Ben and Jennifer gone, we decided that we're no longer a target, so we aren't doing anything. Stacy angrily says, Bill, that's not acceptable. They tried to kill Sam. We can't let this rest and have to do something about it. I feel honored that Stacy would care about me like that, but I really know that she's more interested in Ben. I try to be helpful. I have some friends at the Colorado Bureau of Investigations, so I could ask them if there are any more terror threats. Stacy responds, yes, Sam, please do that. We need to stay on top of things. Then she wonders, I bet that's why Ben left. I worry because Stacy appears to be just as fixated on Ben as ever, and I have no idea how to help her. Present, Ben, Jens, and others. The trip. I look at Jens and the girls and ask, does anyone know where we're going? Jens shrugs her shoulders, and the twins reply, negative, Mr. Blaine. I ask, is there any way to contact the drivers in this rolling technology center? Jens responds, sure, we have wired communications to them. She walks over to the control panel, flips it back over so it's in the communications mode, and hands me what looks to be a CB mic. I press the button and ask, I was just wondering where we're going. One of the drivers responds, this is Tommy. We are headed to the southern United States like you said in your interview. I further ask, are you guys still on I-25 southbound? Tommy replies, we sure are. I tell him, okay, the southern U.S. comment was just to throw off the terrors. Do you guys know a place called Quartzsite, Arizona? Tommy says, we sure do, and we have overnighted there a couple of times. That reminded me of something. Are we planning a stop for tonight? Tommy says, affirmative. We thought we would stop about 7 tonight. There's a Walmart truck stop in Trinidad, Colorado. I ask, I don't think the Walmart in Trinidad is a truck stop and has fuel, so why don't you stop at the Trinidad fuel stop? And will you eating with us or getting truck stop slop? Tommy says, give me a minute. Tommy comes back and says, that does look like a better choice since they have overnight truck parking. And we would prefer to eat with the 4 of you if it's possible. I ask, is there a discreet way for the 2 of you to enter the trailer? Tommy answers, I guess they didn't tell you about the hatch in the bottom of the trailer. We will use it after we get stopped for the night. I look at Mira. She blushes and mouths that she's sorry. I reply, great. We look forward to sharing a table with the 2 of you. I look at Jens and ask, are you up with helping me make some spaghetti with bolognese sauce? Jens says, I would prefer your 4-cheese sauce. It takes less work and I like it better. I will make some garlic bread and a salad. I do some figuring in my mind and say, I figure we need to start cooking about 6 if we're going to stop at 7. Hey, is it safe to cook while this thing is moving? Jens calls the cab and asks, we were wondering if we can cook while you're moving? Tommy comes back on and says, you know, that's a problem we've never had to deal with before. If we have to hit the brakes hard, it would probably make a mess out of things, so it's probably better if you don't. Jens replies, okay, dinner will take about an hour to make, so that means we will eat at 8. Tommy says, that will be fine with us since we really didn't like the idea of eating at the truck stop. I head toward the kitchen and Jens asks, where are you going? I reply, there's a bunch of prep work that I can do now that will save time later. Jens follows and agrees, yeah, you're right. Soon everyone is in the kitchen where I look in the freezer and find a pre-made 4-cheese blend for the pasta sauce. I open the bag, pull out 1.5 cups of frozen cheese, and put the rest back into the freezer. I remark, hell, this is going to make things easy. Jens holds up some dehydrated garlic from the spice rack and adds, tell me about it. I figure I will get a start on the fresh vegetables, so I pull some green onions out of the refrigerator, wash the hell out of my hands, clean the hell out of the green onions, and rapidly chop them. Ira remarks, Mr. Blaine, your culinary knife skills are to be envied. I put them in a bowl back in the refrigerator and say, well, that's all I can do for now. Do you need any help, Jens? Jens smiles at me and says, not really. I pull the baguette out of the freezer. If it's not defrosted in time, I will nuke it. I guess you could tell me what you want in your salad. I reply, just the normal is fine. Jens grins and says, just remember, you had a chance for input. Mira asks, is it possible to have some fruit in the salad? Jens checks the refrigerator and says, it sure is. Whoever stocked this fridge did a great job. I smile and say, well, I guess we have some time to kill before dinner. Ira asks, Mr. Blaine, why would you want to terminate time? I explain, Ira, that's a euphemism which means we don't have anything to do. Jens suggests, we could retire to our room and watch the news. Ira complains, that's boring. We could instead perform a martial arts drill. I yawn and say, well, I don't care what you all do. I'm taking a nap. Wake me up half an hour before we stop. Jens agrees, a nap does sound good to me. Jens and I head off to our bedroom, but get busy doing something else and finally drift off to sleep. There's a knock on the door and we hear, we will be stopping in 30 minutes. Jens smiles at me and says, now that's my kind of nap. I could use one of those several times a day. I spank her butt and say, too much of a nap like this will make the trailer smell like hot sweaty sex. That reminds me, where do we wash our clothes? Jens laughs and answers, I guess you missed the stacked washer and dryer in the bathroom. Talking about the bathroom, I need to go. Jens quickly gets dressed and heads to the bathroom while I put on my clothes and head to the kitchen. On the way, I see Mira and Ira in the exercise area practicing martial arts. I stop and watch and I'm thoroughly impressed. Hell, I'm not sure I can take either of them. I wash up in the kitchen, pull out a pan for the sauce, add a tablespoon of olive oil, a tablespoon of butter, and begin to cook the green onions. Once they turn white, I add enough dehydrated garlic to equal 5 minced cloves, a chicken bouillon cube, 1 cup of cream, and the 1.5 cups of cheese. I slowly heat everything together, making sure to stir it. Mira comes in to watch, so I put her busy stirring the sauce while I prepare the pasta. I throw a good handful of salt in the big pasta pan, cover it with boiling water, and begin to heat it. Once the water boils again, I put the pasta in to cook. Jens comes and begins the salad and garlic bread. It begins to get hot in the kitchen, and I ask, is there a fan in here? Mira flips a switch over the stove, and all the heat is sucked outside. The pasta is almost done, so I turn it off and run it through a colander that's inside a bigger bowl so I can catch the pasta water. I take 1 cup of the pasta water and add it back into the sauce. Mira asks, Mr. Blaine, why did you do that? I reply, it helps the sauce to stick to the pasta and gives it a better flavor. I put the pasta back into the sauce and stir them together. Jens announces, I'm done. We feel the truck stop and Ira says, I will operate the bottom hatch. I look at Jens and ask, so where do we eat? Jens says, we have covers for the pool table. Mira offers, I will convert the pool table. Ira announces, Tommy and Johnny have arrived. We walk out of the kitchen and I finally meet our drivers. I like the look of both of them since they don't look like your typical fat truckers. They both look to be in good to above average condition. Tommy, I recognize his voice, says, man, something smells good. Mira explains, Mr. Blaine made 4 cheese sauce spaghetti, and Ms. Blaine made a great salad and garlic bread. Ira says, please seat yourselves while Mira and I serve. We sit at the table and Mira and Ira do an excellent job arranging the food on the plate. Hell, I usually just toss it on the plate. They bring out my plate first, and I say, no, Jens gets her food first. I pass it to Jens, and we wait for everyone to be served. Once we're all served, Ira says, I feel that we should pray before we eat. Ira and Mira begin to say the Lord's Prayer in Russian, so I join in and surprise them. We finish and begin to eat. I taste Jens' salad and remark, I like the cran raisins, strawberries, and blueberries in the salad, but what's the dressing? Jens smiles and says, it's raspberry vinaigrette. She tastes my pasta and says, you've improved this since the last time I had it. Tommy asks, Mr. Blaine. I interrupt, please call me Ben, and that goes for both of you. Tommy continues, Ben, where did you learn how to cook like this? Jens laughs and explains, Ben was the witch doctor of MREs. He could take any MRE and make it a real dining experience. I correct her, Jens, that's only partially correct since there was nothing I could do to fix the hot dog MRE. Johnny makes a gagging noise and says, please don't remind me of that POS MRE. Tommy concurs, yes, let's not ruin this great meal. I look at them and ask, so don't tell me. You two are not just truck drivers. My guess is you two were former special forces with the Army. They look at each other and Johnny says, geez, I hope we're not that easy to spot. I reply, well, neither of you look like a typical truck driver. Tommy laughs and says, hell, If we keep eating like this each night, it won't be long until we do. The meal is over, then Ira and Mira offer to clear the table. I shake Tommy and Johnny's hands and say, "Thanks for all you're doing for us." Tommy replies, "It's an honor to help you." Johnny says, "Well, we're headed off to the sleeper for the night." I ask, "Is it as nice as the rest of the truck?" Tommy answers, "Hell yeah, it's great. See you guys in the morning." Ira operates the hatch, and our drivers leave. Jens suggests, "How about we finish off this night with a movie?" We head to our room, cuddle on the bed, and watch a movie. Dear listeners, next part of the story will be released soon. Please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.